Hi everybody, my name is Gregory Scott and this is my game, Armoured Commander 2, the World War II Tank Commander roguelike. This is intended to be a updated quick start guide. I haven't done one in quite some time now. There's been a lot of developments and additions and fixes since then. So if you're thinking about picking up the game, or you already have, but you never quite got the hang of how to get started, this video will show you how to begin and sort of the basics of how to start playing. So we start here on the title screen. Most of the input is done through, by default, the keyboard and mouse, mostly through the keyboard, although you can use the mouse to reveal various things on different maps. It does play well with controllers, either a traditional Xbox-style controller or the controller built into the Steam Deck as well. There's still a couple minor bugs which I'm working on, but for the most part, if you do prefer to play with a controller, it'll work perfectly fine. So the first time you boot up the game, you will see this. You won't see continue or load campaign because you haven't played a campaign before. There is a special tutorial that will take you through a sort of a custom-made campaign with many different sort of informational slides that pop up to tell you information about various aspects of the game. It's an excellent way to get started, but I don't want to today read through all of that, so I'm just going to start a new campaign and basically walk you through it as best I can. So, new campaign. Another feature of this game is that virtually all of the commands you need to know will be indicated. They'll be visible at some place. So if you see any of these letters or keyboard commands indicated in this sort of light blue color, that tells you what you need to do in this screen, right? So we can navigate the menus with the W and S keys and select something with Enter. So let's start a new campaign. So at present, and this is the 1.2.17 update, there are 57 different campaigns available, dating from 1939 all the way up until 1945. The campaign that you choose will result in a very different type of challenge and a different type of game. So when you're looking through the various different campaigns, you could start with one that you just find interesting because you want to have a challenge or you like the historical sort of setting of it, but also take a look at this difficulty indicator. The higher it is, the more challenging it will be. So for your first couple of games, I would suggest picking one that's a relatively low difficulty. So for us today, I would say jump in with the Poland campaign because it's only 3 out of 10. It's going to be sort of a familiar setting. Most of the units will be familiar to you, and fighting on the German side in this campaign, you are going to have a lot of support, excellent choices of vehicles and armaments, and it should be a sort of an easy way to get into the game. There's a number of campaigns taking place across the world, all the major areas of fighting during the Second World War. Some of these take place in winter, so you have to contend with snow and very cold temperatures. Others take place in the desert, where you have to deal with desert terrain and hot temperatures. And then, of course, later on, some of them take place in Southeast Asia as well, which has its own difficulties in terms of terrain and the environment that you're in. But just to get started, yeah, jump into the Poland campaign. You can choose a different length. So anything in this campaign, anything from 4 to 20 days. I'm only going to play through sort of one campaign day today. So I'll start with a basic length of 20 days. So tab key to proceed. There's a number of different campaign options. You'll see that each of these has kind of either a toggle or the enemy AI difficulty has a couple different options. Depending on the options that you pick, you will get a VP modifier. What that means is that the victory points that you gain, which is kind of the basic metric by which you determine or that you see how well you're doing in the game, you'll get a bonus for making things harder for yourself or a penalty for making them easier. Now again, for your first game, I wouldn't go to trying to gain too many victory points. You're just trying to learn. The first option, player commander, is basically permadeath. So if your player commander who represents you dies, your game ends. I would suggest keeping this on. You can play through sort of an indefinite campaign if you leave it off, but I feel like it fits better with the spirit of the game to leave it on. Fate points are excellent when you're just starting out, but I think eventually you will want to leave them behind. So I would say for your first game, definitely turn that on. It does give you a victory point penalty, but when you're still learning, they can save your life or save your campaign at some very critical junctions. Realistic explosions, leave those off, at least for now. You can add them on later on. Random vehicle model, a lot of players like to play with this. I prefer to be able to pick my vehicle so I can sort of choose what I'm going to be running in, what my crew is going to be using. Again, this is something you might want to add later on. Go it alone even more so. This means that you don't just have a squadron of tanks or armored vehicles, it's just you alone, which is obviously much more challenging. Ahistorical availability will will basically get rid of all of the historical dice rolls and probabilities that the game does and give you things that historically were not or were very unlikely to be available during that period of time. Again, leave that off. Armored cars doesn't have a modifier, so it's completely up to you. If you turn it on, that means you will be offered armored cars, so that's sort of much more lightly armored. Usually does not have a strong gun or main weapon, and usually wheeled rather than tracked. So it's totally up to you whether you want to include those in your game. Realistic injuries, leave those off for now, add it on later on. Enemy rate of fire, again, leave it off for now, something you can add later. Enemy AI difficulty, I would say just leave it for easy. Essentially, all it does is that the enemy will be much less aggressive and active. It gives you a little bit more time to think and a little bit more time to react. So for your first game, at least when you're learning the game, I would suggest for you to pick this list of campaign options. All right, so in every campaign, at the moment you start, you're going to be offered a selection of vehicles, which is based on that historical moment in time and the vehicles that were actually used within that campaign. So here we have armored cars turned on, which means we have everything from very light armored cars to heavier ones, then light tanks, medium tanks, and sort of Panzer IV, which the early versions of which were intended to be infantry support tanks as well. You can also drive a half-track with an anti-aircraft gun on it and have 6 crew members, but I would advise you against doing this, especially for your first game. For me, I feel like of these, the Panzer IIIF is quite a good tank. It's got some decent armor. It's got a fairly good gun, but for myself, my favorite is absolutely the Panzer 38T, one of the tanks seized from Czechoslovakia and then deployed in the early war. Now, when you look at the tank and you look at the stats here, each one of these is kind of like a short form, a very brief way of indicating various data about the vehicle. At the top here is 37L, that's the main gun, so it's a long-barreled 37mm gun. It has a coaxial machine gun, so that's a machine gun that is mounted next to the main gun. It points in the same direction, and then it has a bow machine gun as well, so that's more for sort of close-up infantry, and it always faces the same direction as your hull does as well. It is armored, which is good. Armor is good for staying alive. It has turret armor, rated 3/1, and then it has hull armor, rated 3/1. And the armor system here is similar to that in Advanced Squad Leader, if that's ever a game that you've taken a look at. It gives you the front armor first and then the side armor. And each point is more or less equal to about 10 millimeters of armor, but that can change based on whether it's sloped armor, better quality armor, curved, or whatever. But it's just a sort of a point value to tell you how much protection you do have. ST at the top here indicates a slow turret. So when you're turning the turret and when you're turning the turret to face different targets during a battle, you're going to have some penalties there as well. But overall, it's a good ride anyway. So let's take that. So here we go. Our day begins. This layer of the game is called the campaign calendar layer. It's where you start every day and you also end up here at the end of every combat day as well. Gives you some essential information about what's going to happen today, a little sort of narrative background, an indication as to what today's mission is. Today we're on a spearhead mission, so today is all about pushing forward through the enemy lines and trying to move as far as possible into enemy territory. We have a good amount of air support, so that means airplanes that we can bring in that will attack or bomb enemy forces for us. Artillery support that will do the same, sort of off-board artillery sending in attacks, again to help us out and to support us. And then unit support, which basically gives us the option of calling in friendly units to spawn into a battle, everything from infantry units to small teams to armored vehicles and all sorts of things that can help us out. Again, all of the inputs in the game should be very clearly indicated. So here, if you just want to start your day, you would go ahead and press the tab key, but there's also different menu tabs. So we can take a look at our crew and our vehicle, a little background as to what the tank is about. There's the information for our tank, and here's our crewmen that were automatically generated for us. Now at the moment, our crewmen are new, but they have had some training, so each one of them has a certain number of advanced points. So for example, this is us. This represents the player, Harold Hoffman. Doesn't currently have a nickname, 25 years old. You can see his rank, is the unit that he's assigned to, and his position. He has a number of stats. Perception is all about how well the crew can spot enemy units and sort of see the terrain. Morale is how much they have this kind of will to fight and will to stay alive, very important as well. Grit is physical resilience to injury and to other factors. And knowledge is their kind of battle knowledge and military knowledge that helps out with all sorts of things. You can see at the bottom here, he's already got a couple skills. So he is able to be a commander with no penalties. He can also jump into the gunner role with no penalties as well. He's also a trained driver, so he could, in a pinch, he could serve as a driver, but he's not as experienced in that role as the other two as well. A lot of the campaigns will also have campaign skills that are sort of unique to that campaign, automatically given to qualifying crewmen. In this case, we have the combined operations skill, which gives us a bonus to support requests anytime that we request it. And this reflects sort of the historical background of different forces within these different campaigns. So we have 5 advance points. We should use them because it will help keep us alive. At the moment, we only have 1 grit point, and if we want to stay alive and not get injured, it's important to increase that. So look on the left here, you see all of your keyboard inputs. Press Q. Let's add a point of grit because that will help keep us alive and to resist injury. Always good. Let's add a point of morale as well because we are the commander and we need to inspire the rest of our crew. Increase. There we go. Let's see if there's any skills that we can add. Well, so each of these skills has some kind of a minimum stat or minimum other skill as a prerequisite. At the moment, we could add driver direction, but that's not too handy. So I think at the moment, we're serving as both the commander and the gunner. So let's add a point of perception because that should open up additional skills for us. Yeah, and let's add the crack shot skill. So that gives us a base to hit bonus whenever firing a gun, which we will be doing fairly often, I would say. And then finally, I'm going to add another point of grit because, again, this is me. This represents the player. I want to make sure that they stay alive. All right, so the rest of our crew. Loader, let's add a point of grit for him. Hopefully he'll survive at least a few days and get some experience points and some advances. What do we have here? Driver, can't add any skills yet, so let's add a perception point. And assistant driver, steady hands. He may be using machine gun once in a while, but I want to keep him alive, so I'm going to add a grit point. There we go. So we've spent all the base advanced points, and later on, for those crewmen who survive a day, they will get a number of experience points, which gives them advances, and then you can do the same thing, increase their stats or add new skills. So over here on the command menu, what else do we have? We have our journal, which is very sparse because we haven't done anything yet. And then finally, we can take a look at the field hospital. Sometimes crewmen will be injured so severely that they can't keep fighting. They have to be taken off the front lines for a bit. They'll spend some time in the field hospital and then come back and you can reassign them to your crew. So all that's left for us to do is to start our day. Of course, if you're running a tank and you have a gun, not just purely machine guns, you need to decide what sorts of ammo you want to add into the main gun. So in this display in the center here, you can see we have high explosive, armor piercing, and armor piercing composite rigid, which is basically a much more effective type of armor piercing round. On the left here, you'll see a little explanation for what all of these different ammo types mean. Now, at this moment in time, historically, our model of tank was not yet issued with a PCR, so even though it's possible we may get some later, today there's none available, so it's not even an option for us. You can see at the bottom here we can have in general stores, so that's ST, a total of 66 rounds, and in our ready rack, which is a sort of a little box of ammo very close to the gun, easy to grab and easy to use to reload, we can have 6 rounds. If we want to, we can take up to 9 extra rounds, but if you have extra rounds in the tank rolling around, it's dangerous, and if you get knocked out, it could be very bad for your crew. So for your first game, for this screen, I would always say hit X or click autofill recommended layout, and the game will basically just choose what it thinks is the best balanced loadout for you and add it in. So there we are, we've loaded our gun. We only have 1 gun on this tank, some have more. But we're loaded and we're ready to go. So let's continue. So we come in, and the sun rose at 5, let's see. If you ever want to review these messages, you can always pull up the messages menu. There's a series of menus operated by the escape key, F1, 2, 3, and 4. Messages are stored here. So today the sun rose at 5:14, and the time of the sunrise is based on the geographical location and the date during the year as well. We know we'll set it at 1840, so that's 6:40 p.m. And we know that around the time of the sunset, that's when our combat day will end. And of course, even though we got going and sort of around sunrise or maybe a little earlier, it still takes us some time to move from our base of operations to the front lines. So 25 minutes have already passed in the day. So at the top here, you can see current date, September 5th, 1939. Depending on the campaign, you might not actually get in and fight on the first day of the historical campaign. Maybe you're in a unit that was being held back for a different operation, but eventually you will get onto the front lines and fighting. So currently it is 5:39 in the morning. We're in the first map area. That's to say that even though you can see this nice little map here with roads and lakes and forests and things, if we move along and are good at what we do and very fast, we could move into a second map area or a third indefinitely until the combat day comes to an end. So in the top right, we have indication of the environmental conditions. It's still summertime. The weather is clear, there's no clouds. It's relatively warm, light winds, and the ground is dry. Each of these things may have an impact on fighting and on combat. So won't get into it too much now, but later on, different weather conditions based on the geographical location and the time during the year will have sometimes quite a severe impact on fighting and on the conditions in which you find yourself. If you use your mouse cursor and you hover it over any of these zones, you can see a little information about it. So down here in good tried and true roguelike fashion, we are indicated by this little @ symbol. So this is us, we're at the bottom here. Around us is a red dotted line indicating the sort of the front lines. So friendly forces, our forces control this territory, everything else is controlled by enemy forces at this time. There's a line here in the lake because nobody can control a lake. I guess a small boat could, but essentially for our purposes, it's not really part of the territory that you can control. On the left of the screen is the main command menu. So this shows you everything that you can do from this view. And you can switch through the tabs with the number keys. So supply, if you are starting to run out of ammo for your main gun, you can call in resupply. You can also move shells from the ready rack to your general stores and back again from here as well. You can take a look at your crew, and from here you can open up the same crew menus we saw before. You don't have to spend your advance points at any you can spend them at any time, basically, even in the middle of a battle if you want to. Travel menu tells you current levels of different types of support, and then from here you can pick different directions by using these directional keys. Do I want to think about moving over here into the hills? Do I want to move into the road, etc.? And then finally you can take a look at your battle group. So you're not alone here unless you pick that campaign option. You do have, for this particular battle, 3 other tanks, and you can also give them a general sort of a command. So fire at will, attack anything as you like, attack my target, concentrate your fire on whatever I am attacking at the time, hold fire, don't attack anything whatsoever, or on my mark. Don't attack until I do, and then let loose and do it. Do whatever you like. So the main menu tab that you'll be using here is travel. You can pick a different direction. So let's see. Take a look at the map that's around us. So these little sort of gold coin emblems here, I guess, indicate objectives. If you complete these objectives, they give you extra victory points, which is good because that's kind of the measure of your success. And the more victory points you get, the more experience your crew gets, and the faster they can get advances. So this one is a recon, which means all we have to do is go over here and do some reconnaissance and find out what's there, and then we get 4 victory points just for doing that. Capture, in this zone we would have to actually go in, defeat the enemy forces, and take it over to get that bonus. Another recon, and a capture as well. So when you're on the map, look around you and try to figure out, plot your path in terms of what you want to do to capture enemy-held zones. Obviously, as you might expect, if you're moving along roads, it'll be much faster than moving cross-country, and different types of terrain will slow you down or have different sorts of effects when you fight in them as well. So let's move toward the road. Now, we can have 2 choices. We can go in blind and just say, we'll just move there and see what happens, or we can send out our reconnaissance forces, and it only takes 10 minutes, so let's do that. You can imagine like little armored cars and other, motorcycles and stuff. We ordered them to go to that next zone, see what's there, and come back and give us a report. So they reported, they say it's enemy strength of 3, so this is out of 10, so 3 out of 10. And they estimate that there's about maybe 2 cavalry squads in this zone. These reports are not always going to be accurate, but they're usually not too far off the mark. It's better information than we had otherwise, which was no information at all. So 2 cavalry squads, I'm not too afraid. I'm going to move into this zone without calling any kind of other support. I'm just going to take a chance. Excellent. So we didn't end up finding any enemy resistance. The level was only 3, and it's not that every time you move into a zone you're going to trigger a battle. Sometimes you won't. Of course, the higher the enemy resistance, the more likely that you will. So I'm now in this zone. I've captured it. I'm on the road. I'm going to recon this zone just to grab an easy 4 victory points. No risk for me other than using up a little bit extra time. And then I'm going to recon down the road and see what it's like over here. Support weapon team, still not too bad. 3 out of 10. I'm going to take my chances and just move in with no support. No resistance as well. I will mention that every time you move into a zone and don't find enemy resistance, there's a kind of a hidden counter or modifier that will make it even more likely that you run into resistance later on. So the more times that you move unopposed, the more likely it is that you will eventually find a battle, which keeps things exciting anyway. So let's recon this zone. Easy 4 victory points. Take a look down the road. Okay, so here we have a cavalry squad, anti-aircraft gun, which would be fairly bad for us, although I don't think that Poland has that many high caliber AA guns at this time, and a support weapon team. Okay, I think my luck's going to run out, so I'm going to call in some support. We have air, artillery, and unit support. I'm going to call in air support and artillery support. Okay. Now I will mention, I don't know what's going to happen. I haven't set up anything in the background of this game in advance, but if we move in and a battle is triggered, a number of things are going to happen very quickly. Okay, it's going to automatically do the air attacks. It's going to automatically do the artillery attacks. They might get an ambush attack on me, but if it does happen, we'll just watch it happen, and then I'll give you a little explanation as to what all that was about after it happens. If it does, we'll see. Yes, all right, battle happens. Here we go. So does our air support arrive? No, we aren't able to get air support. That's not good. Artillery? No, failed as well. So I have no support in this. And they've ambushed us. Okay, luckily they didn't attack. They've just sort of alerted them. They've become alert of our presence, which makes sense. So what happened there is that even though I called in support, as you saw, there is a chance that it won't actually arrive. Maybe you weren't able to make a radio contact, or maybe you requested it and the forces just weren't able to get to your location in time. In my case, I was very unlikely. Both of the support options failed. All right, so now we're thrown into a battle, and this final screen is sort of the base layer, or the combat layer of the game. Where on the left you can see your tank information, list of your crew. Down here on the bottom left is going to be, it's going to change depending on which phase of the turn you're in, and it will show you all the different commands you can do. But the main part of the screen here is the main battle map. Right there in the center is us, right? This is our tank. Our hull is always facing upward. That's forward for us. And then the little line, in our case, shows which direction our turret is pointing. As you can see, we're not alone. We have friends in this as well. And if I use the mouse wheel, I can sort of scroll through the stack of units, and you can see here too, pictured in light blue, are our allied tanks. So there's actually 4 tanks in total in this zone, which is about 120 meters across. And as you can see, the map in Armored Commander 2 is very, very abstract, right? If we mouse over this, we can see that this we, at the moment, are in a sort of an area of fields. The tanks nearby to us are in wooden buildings, fields, fields, and fields, but this is not it's not literally accurately represented on the map. The map shows you abstract zones, and then you just have to imagine that there's all kinds of terrain out here, and the individual units and their terrain that's around them is what is shown to us, for just to keep things sort of simple. So what we know is that we're facing 3 enemy units at the moment. There might be more later on, but this is what we can see right now. One is directly in front of us, and we have clear line of sight. That means we can't see them yet, but once we can, there's nothing, solid between the two of us that would prevent us from attacking each other. We also have one behind us, which is very bad. If you remember when I mentioned about the armor, we have 3 on the front, but only 1 on the side, and on the back that's actually 1 point worse. So any AP attacks, armor-piercing attacks coming in from the back are going to be very, very damaging to us. There's also one enemy in front of us that our line of sight is blocked. So that means even though we have a sense that there's something there, there's something very solid and very, massive between us and them. It's going to be a hill or a village or something where even if we knew we were there, we couldn't directly attack each other. So keeping enemies outside of line of sight is a good way to kind of triage your threats. Keep some at arm's length while you're dealing with others. Now at the moment, I don't like at all where I am. I'm not hull down, which means I don't have kind of close-in protection around the tank. I'm just in fields, which doesn't offer a lot of protection, and there's something behind me which I don't like at all. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move, and I'm going to try to get into a better position. And recall as well that this map is very abstract, and it's always centered on you. So if I'm successful in moving, you might notice that this little @ symbol, doesn't actually move around the screen at all. Rather, it stays centered on us, and everything else is shifted around as a result. So my commander is going to direct movement. That means that you are looking out and giving instructions to the driver how best to navigate the terrain. Loader doesn't need to do anything. The driver is going to drive. That's good. That's usually what he does. And the assistant driver doesn't need to do anything. I'm going to stay buttoned up right now. I'm not going to open up my hatches. There's no reason for me to be any more vulnerable than I already am. All right. So in this first phase, command phase, all the commands are set. So let's end the phase and go to the next one. So movement phase, and you can see up here it says what your chances of success are. This is determined by your tank's engine, by the heaviness of your tank, by the terrain that's around you, and any applicable skills as well. So I'm going to try to get a little bit further away than both of these. There we go. So I was successful in moving. Now my allies are going to do attack. No effect. All right. So what happened there is that I finished my movement phase and then my allies got a chance to act. So these other tanks that are next to you, they're AI controlled, but they'll do their best to help you out and to destroy targets wherever possible. Now, one of my allied tanks spotted something down here. So if I right click on it, it's an artillery tractor. It's a non-combat unit, but it's designed to move artillery around the battlefield. That means that even though I can't spot this other unit, chances are it's some kind of big gun, which for me is not good at all. So I'm going to do another move action. I'm going to try to turn around, and actually now that I'm in wooden buildings, I'm going to try to go hull down. So going hull down is like, I'll use this. I've got this little guy right here to demonstrate. This is my little firefly. So going hull down means that wherever you are, there's something really big and really solid that covers your hull, but leaves your turret able to sort of turn and fire. So maybe it's a hill, maybe it's like a stone wall or something, but whatever it is, you've got some nice protection between your hull and the enemy, whereas your turret can still freely fire. So in this game, anytime you can get the hull down is good, and will probably keep you alive. So let's do that. So another turn with the same commands. And now that that other unit is actually, yeah, that's probably good. Keep it at the side rather than the rear. And now I'm going to tell my driver, all right, pivot a bit and then try to get into a hull down position. Excellent. Good job, J. Horn. All right, we spotted that other gun. And it deployed. And the tractor's gone. That's fine. We don't really care about the tractor. So it is a 40mm long-barreled autocannon, which is not good. It actually has a better gun than we do. It very likely has armor-piercing rounds, and it is a huge threat to us at the moment. But we are hull down, and we're in wooden buildings, so now my strategy is going to shift from moving around to get into a better position to staying put and just putting as much fire on that gun as I can. So in this tank, the commander is also the gunner, which means that he has to operate the gun to fire it. In a lot of other tanks, they're two separate roles. You can have the gunner firing and then the commander can do other things. But in this case, I have to operate the gun. Loader's going to reload. Good job. And everybody else, let's have the assistant driver pass ammo. That means that the assistant driver is going to help move shells up from stores to the gun, and it might give me a bonus for reloading if it comes to that. So, good. I'm going to turn my turret, because as you can see, the turret can only really fire sort of in front of where it's facing, but the point of a turret is that it can spin around, so now we can fire at the gun over here. And for guns, they're not armored, so the best thing to use against them is high explosive. And when you fire, you have a choice of reloading from general stores or reloading from the ready rack. Reloading from the ready rack gives you a much better chance of having multiple shots in a single turn. And in this game, that's called rate of fire, or ROF. This gun and this current sort of setup that I don't have a huge ROF chance, but honestly, any time you can get off 2 shots in a turn, it's definitely well worth it. So I have chosen my target. I can fire at it. I've chosen my ammo. So let's fire. So this is the little attack screen on the left here. You'll see the attacker. You'll see the target. Eventually, and probably very soon, it'll be somebody else up here and it'll be us as the target. Down here you can see the base chance of effect, and then you see all the various different modifiers that modify your chance to hit. So here we've got a pretty bad modifier because we rotated our turret in the same turn. That's not going to affect us in later turns because we only have to rotate it once. It's a small target. We can't do anything about that. It's in wooden buildings. Again, we can't do anything about that. It's a relatively long gun, so we have a certain bonus to hit at this long range, but it is small caliber, which means it doesn't have a lot of power behind it. It's hard to get these shells down range when you're firing at something that is, in this case, a kilometer away or so. But at the bottom there, I did take the crack shot skill, so because I have that skill, I get a tiny little bonus at the end. All of those added together, however, it still doesn't add up to a possible hit. So at this point, I'm just trying to get sort of the range on the target. I'm trying to throw something down, and as you'll see, if you fire it at a stationary target multiple times, you do get a bonus. So I'm not expecting to hit now, but I'm trying to set up something better for the next turn. Okay, it was a miss. I knew that was going to happen. So let's end the shooting phase and see what happens. So my allies are helping me out, attacking that other unit, which I think is infantry. Yeah, riflemen, okay. And they're destroyed, yay! Excellent job, guys. Okay, so they're gone. The gun didn't do anything. So let's just do the same thing again. Now, as you can see, I actually have a chance. Critical chance is 3%, it's not great. A full effect, that means basically a direct hit, almost 20%, which is good. And a partial hit, which is not getting a direct hit, but close enough to, to worry them or do some damage, is actually not bad. And the big difference here is that I don't get the penalty for rotating my turret, that's already done, but I do get a big bonus for what's called acquired target. That means that I haven't moved, they haven't moved, and I'm sort of homing in on where I need to fire. So let's send a shell down range and see how it goes. And I missed. I missed, but I did maintain rate of fire. That means that my crew has worked together so well, I have reloaded and I can send off another shot before this turn ends. So yeah, for sure I'm going to do it. Let's give it another try. It's another miss. Now, for that second shot, I got a slightly better bonus. It's what's called dialed in. There's kind of 2 levels of ranging in on your target. Dialed in is the maximum, however. No matter how many times I shoot at the same target, I'm not going to get better than that. But honestly, this is not a bad percentages, and I'm willing to stay here and to see what happens in future turns. So I don't have any more weapons to fire, just end the phase. Nobody else has fired. It's possible that a lot of my squad mates can't even see this gun. There might be a blocked line of sight between the two, I don't know. But in any case, I can keep attacking. It's fine by me. Critical hit, excellent. So I got a very good roll. That means I not only got a direct hit, but I got a hit maybe on the actual gun or the crew itself. Just lobbed it right into their position. 8 firepower is what's the effect on them. That's probably going to be a destroy. Let's see. 8 firepower. All right, they're reduced. So I took out some of the crew, incapacitated them. It means the unit is weakened, but it's still active. So let's just keep doing that. Missed again. hit. No effect. I don't see any reason to change up my strategy. I'm in a good position. It's not firing back. I've got lots of ammo. It was pinned down by my fire. That's good. That means it's much less likely to shoot back, and if it did, it would have a penalty. All right, a couple more turns, and I think I got to move because this is just silly. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna move. I probably shouldn't. I should probably be patient, but that's not usually how I play. I'm gonna come in closer. No, not much chance of hitting with the coaxial machine guns. Although my squad mates are going to try. Oh, they got 2 firepower. No effect. You can see how weak they're getting, right? They've already been pinned once. They're reduced. Now even 2 firepower has a good chance of taking them out. So. All right, so we did so much damage on them that they just ended up surrendering. Fair enough. They didn't want to keep fighting. It was just not worth it for them to keep firing back, and so they're done. All right, so I am going to end this video here. It's already been more than 30 minutes. I know I said this was kind of a quick start video, but as you can appreciate, it's quite a complex game. There's a lot of things going on. I promise you though, if you try it out, and if it's the sort of game you think that you might like, eventually the systems all start to make sense. I'll also mention at the end that we do have an active Discord server going. I'll drop a link to it in the comments to this video. Please do join us there. There's a lot of very interesting characters on the server. A lot of them know the game at this point much better than even I do. And if you have any questions or any suggestions, they will be very warmly welcomed there. So again, hope that you enjoyed the game. I hope this has helped you sort of get into it and explain the basics. And I hope to record further videos in the future talking about different, more advanced aspects of the game as well. But until then, take care.